Edges are one of those elements in your artwork that can be the secret sauce to taking your work from good to extraordinary in no time. Hi, Carrie Alves here, and welcome to the channel. And today we're diving into the world of preparing and creating edges in your portrait drawings. Now, edges may seem like a small thing, but they hold enormous power in the ability to elevate the impact and the quality of your artwork. And what a lot of artists don't realize is that actually variety is the key. Keeping your edges the same all the way through your artwork can actually make the piece seem very monotonous and dull. And the key here is actually to focus on creating nuance. You want to have clarity in some areas and you want to have mystery in others. So let's explore how edges can truly transform your artwork. This tutorial was taken from my full course called Draw a Portrait from Your Own Photo. Okay, so I finished my lay-in and I've got my separation of my lights and my darks, and I've got a flat, even tone pretty much throughout this stage of the drawing. We have accuracy, we have sort of tonal values, and we have what we need to basically begin building a solid drawing and moving in to more and more detail as we move forward. So the next stage we're going to be working on is called edge preparation. And what that is actually dealing with the transitions between your darker values and your lighter values. Basically what you want to be looking at is the quality of the transitions as they move from one value tone to the next. So if we take a look at this one here on this image, this is a very abrupt transition. We have the absolute highlights of her face and they're right beside some of the darkest darks. And so the edge of her face actually creates that particular edge. There's no soft transition pretty much anywhere. As opposed to somewhere right here, like for instance in the forehead, and certainly here in the cheek, these transitions are very gradual and very, very soft. And so therefore they have to be treated very, very differently. And so this is what edge quality is. It's going in and it's looking at each particular area of the drawing and then assessing the quality of that edge and then preparing it for the next stage of the drawing. So this one, for instance, this harder edge, I would be dealing with that differently. I would get in there and I would bring my value up and I would be working directly up to that edge like that. For instance, even her eyebrows here. These are not, she has darker points on this, but there's no hard outline along there. I've got to go back in and I've got to start softening along the edges of these eyebrows. This is made up of hair, and obviously hair isn't going to have this razor sharp edge. There's going to be a certain sort of fuzziness, shall we say, along the edge. So I've got to start breaking that down. The same thing in the area of her eyelashes. There's a core dark band where the eyelashes bunch together, but on the peripheral of that, there's little lashes coming out and a softer edge. Same thing down here. It's all very soft along here. There's a whole value patch that's right there under the cheek. Her lips, even here, where there's a, right in the crease of the lips, where there's a pretty one of the sharper edges in the drawing. But even there, the value comes out from that edge and then begins to soften and work out around the form of the lip. Even if she were heavily made up, very rarely is the mouth completely lined. So you can see that this edge here begins to diffuse and break up, and along the top there's a certain softness to it. Then of course we have the whole length of the nose, has its own quality as well. It diffuses up here, and then there's a kind of a terminator line along there. In other words, this edge has a kind of a buildup of a tonal value, and then it softens, and then it softens even more down on the ball of the nose, and then right even here I've got it delineated with a line right now to sort of mark a boundary, but in the end I'll just start building up a certain value tone, and there may be points where that line absolutely disappears. Along here, along the the base of her cheek under her eye, there's a certain quality, and then along here, the whole roundness of the cheek. This area here, I'm going to have to break down quite a bit because there's actually here is what we called a lost edge. It's when the change is almost imperceptible. Here it's very clear. There, getting from this tonal value up to here is so gradual, it's just a gradient. And then we have here inside of the fingers, we have this harder edge here where the light is bouncing off the edge of her finger, but then it creates deep shadows in between the fingers. And then this other finger falls into the shadow of the hair. And so I've left this very loose, and I'll be dealing with this in a very different way than I will the rest of the fingers. I'm not going to go in there and make each one of the fingers sort of prominent, because they're not. And I don't want that interpretation. I want to have aspects of the fingers coming through, but I don't want them to take away from the main event. And the main event is actually right here of this image. It's actually the triangle of the features. And you'll also see as the image moves forward that I'm going to be dealing with this part of her face very, very differently than I'm going to be dealing with the peripheral, because I want this to become the focal point in terms of the amount of detail and how I deal with my edges. Maybe I may even drop a lot of them all together, or the amount of intensity in my values. Just a whole bunch of different things are going to be different, because I don't want it all to be the same. I'm not going to be slavishly copying my photograph. I'm going to be interpreting my reference material, but not copying it exactly. So what I'm going to be doing is looking at my reference material and then looking at each very specific area, and then going in and preparing those edges for the blending and the transition that's going to come later on, and making sure that you have a variety of edges. So we don't want to be going in there making all these hard outlines across everything. It doesn't look good. What you want is this variety of a number of different elements. You want this push-pull back and forth of a variety of different things, as in you want the darks against the lights. You want the soft against the hard. You want the detail against the very, very vague and nebulous. These are the things that the eye likes. It likes the variety, and it makes for a much more dynamic and much more interesting picture. We will take and work these nice, hard, clean lines and have them right next to very, very soft and virtually imperceptible edges. And also creating that variety, and also how you handle that variety of edge quality, also helps to create that focal point. So as we're working through the details of this edge quality, we'll get used to the names that we'll refer to them as, and also where they're appropriate and where we're going to look very carefully at mimicking what we see with our reference material. And then we'll look at where we're going to leave that off and then interpret and put our own take on where we want our edges to go and how we want them to play out in order to create the kind of image that we want to create, and be able to put the focus where we want it, not simply put it there because it's there.
Next, let's take a look at using edge quality as a means and a technique of enhancing the emotional impact of your artwork.
Okay, so with this piece, I'd like to build on this concept of using your edges as an effective tool within your artwork. So this piece is a very emotional piece. It tells a story. So how am I using edges in this case as an effective tool? So this happens to be a story about a daughter and a mother, and she's with the mother while she is passing. So this is a very intimate moment. And so I'm using edges here as a very specific storytelling element. So the obvious area here is the top of the mother's head. It is gone, okay? It is completely faded away. And what I've used is a completely lost edge going off into a very, very light value. And in here, I've created a very, very group of soft edges right where they connect right there. And you can see that the edges, they undulate. So I've got a hard edge here just to create some kind of a delineation between the two of them. And then it softens, and then it's virtually lost. In other words, I want to create with the edges a sense of connection. And so I'm using that tool, that technique, in order to express an emotion. I'm doing the same thing up here. I'm also using a lot of soft transitions throughout the entire piece in order to create a sort of a sense of tenderness, shall we say. And I'm careful to put a few little hard edges here and there. Right there on the bridge of her nose is very well defined, which helps to create the sense of depth of the socket of her eye. But then on the nose right here, it almost, well, in fact right there, that edge disappears altogether. Same thing in there. It's very, very soft all throughout there. The edges are very soft and transitional throughout there as well. And to create this variety, you'll see that the edges are hard right in her eyes, even though they're closed, the edge of her nostrils, and then in the crease of her mouth. And that's pretty much it in the older woman's entire face. It's those little bits that are the opposite of everything else that create this sense of variety. It allows you to sort of create that sense of emotion, and also creates a kind of a visual interest. Character's face is in shadow. She's grieving the loss. This woman's face is gravitating up towards the light. both of them are having a transcendent experience, or both of them are having an experience. They're very different experiences that I'm using the sense of light, the sense of dark, and the use line quality and the use of edge quality in order to convey two different experiences in the totality of what's being expressed here in this drawing. So you can see here that edges have played a huge part. So all of this is quite deliberate, okay? These are aesthetic choices in order to convey a message, an emotion, or the idea that what it is that we're trying to say with our artwork. So how can you manipulate edges effectively? By simply experimenting with the variety. You have hard edges, soft edges, found edges, and completely lost edges where things merge together and you can't tell where one starts and the other stops. By focusing on the quality of these transitions, you can add interest and emotion to your artwork. This tutorial was part of a full course that I offer on my Patreon site and is called Draw a Portrait from Your Own Photo. And if you would like to learn the skills to draw beautiful and realistic portraits, you can. Simply go to the Patreon link in the description below and find out how. So as we wrap up, remember the importance of really focusing and working with your edges. They can really be the finishing touch that can really elevate your work up to a whole new level. Personally, I found that the best thing to do is to take a piece and decide that you're going to focus on that one skill set. Find an interesting drawing that works well with that concept and then make it your mission to really push the boundaries in that particular drawing using that particular skill set. And you're focused on it and it will start to become of your interior awareness of how to approach your artwork. Please feel free to share your images in the comments below. I would love to see how you're using this technique to transform your artwork. And don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more transformational tips on how to improve your artwork. Well, that's a wrap, and thanks very much for watching. And remember, the magic is in the details. And don't forget, stay creative. This is your time to express yourself. We'll see you in the next video.